I had a basketball player I trained years ago, high school basketball player, female. When we started, she was just timid and not doing great on the court. Man, I worked with her for a year and a half, and she just became a defensive powerhouse. Like, girls bigger than her we got her squat and deadlift up big time. And yeah, I remember her parents invited me to a game, and I remember going and seeing, and I remember the other players bouncing off of her, and it was awesome to see.
Brandon, what's up, man? So great to see you. It's been, 6 months, 7 months, something like that. Has it been that long since you came out here for one of our events?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit longer.
Time goes so fast. I have a
5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I have no idea how the hell that happened.
I have a 16-year-old who is going to be a senior next year. So that's pretty wild too.
I have so many questions, Brian. I don't know how much time you have today, but we could just go off on that.
I don't have any answers. I wish I did, but I have not got it figured out yet. And every time I think I have it figured out, something else is thrown at me, and I'm like, well, that didn't work. What do I need to do now?
That's a bit comforting and a bit scary. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, man, I loved having you out when you came out. And one of the things that I think naturally I noticed, and I think a lot of guys do, they probably don't acknowledge they do, is your physique. You know, when we did the ice baths and everything else, I'm like, man, that guy is jacked. He's big, he's strong, he's jacked. And I think a lot of guys would love to be at the most superficial level looking like somebody that has a physique like yours.
Thanks, man. My ego's doing backflips over here right now. But so I've been in health and fitness for about 25 years now. So I'm glad to hear I look the part. I am more concerned with. Can I tell you a joke?
Yeah, keep going. I'm listening. Keep going.
Gotcha. So I told Father Michael Butler this joke, but I made this one up myself. What is the difference between a bodybuilder and a stripper? The stripper has money. The stripper has money, can at least fake a personality, and arguably serves a purpose in this world. Now, I am going to catch a lot of hate right off the bat for that. I actually posted that in the IC once. And it's upset a lot of people. But, I want to be clear. I'm not saying bodybuilding is easy. It is not. It is a difficult, challenging endeavor. But I like to pursue service over status in my health and fitness. I look at the aesthetic qualities as a side effect. A side effect I enjoy for sure, but it is not the primary pursuit.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one I'm gonna step in and defend bodybuilders a little bit. I think the one thing where bodybuilding is really cool that I admire is, and I've never done any bodybuilding competitions. I've never trained for bodybuilding, none of that. But one thing that I think is cool is to see how far you can push this human machine. I don't think it's a sustainable way of life, but I think it's a great opportunity for somebody to really push the limits on what the human body is capable of and what it could actually look like under these very precise set of circumstances.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And again, I want to stress, I am not saying it's easy. I will tell you just a quick story here where my notions about bodybuilding come from. Back when I was like 12, my brother and I, we would go to this world gym in North Versailles. Family friend. I don't know if he was a franchise owner or a manager or whatever. Johnny D was his name. It's the only way I knew him. So he was there and he would, go do this. He would give us little workouts to do. And we were working out one day, and these two guys were standing in front of the mirror. They were trainers there. And they were posing down, right? And like one would show his arms, the next one would. They would take off their shirts, chest, back. Each round of posing, like another article of clothing came off in a public gym, until you remember jam pants? Remember those from the 80s?
What,
So
like MC Hammer
like
pants
MC
or what?
Hammer pants, yes. So
Got it. Okay,
that's what
yeah,
bodybuilders
sure.
wore. So until they both had jam pants around their ankles, and then one of them says,
Oh, jeez.
"It doesn't matter if you look better. I'm stronger." And the other one goes, "Well, what do I care? If you're stronger, I look better." And at 12 years old, I remember thinking, "That's not something a man should say." You know, you might be stronger, but I look better. And then Johnny sweeps in, and he was like half the size of these guys. And he was like finger in the face. We couldn't hear what he was saying, but they were like scared of him, right? And he comes back by my brother and I, and he's like, whenever there's, real work to be done, they both have injuries and are worthless. So that is my first perception of bodybuilders. And again, it's just, it's kind of that and some other mentors I had coming up. It's guided my pursuit of, again, going towards service over status. And I want to stress, I know I'm going to catch hate for it, for everything I've said so far. I am not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's not something I am going to pursue. Or even, I've had people approach me to coach them for bodybuilding competitions. And I tell them, hey, I know some great coach. I do have friends that are bodybuilders. I do. And I refer people who want to do that to them because, could I coach someone to do that? Sure, but I think you would want a coach who is like into it. You know what I mean?
Sure, of course. Yeah. Do you feel like most guys who want to get fit, this is probably a busy time of year, it's the beginning of the year, guys are thinking about New Year's resolutions, and obviously physique, build, everything like that is something that's on a lot of guys' minds. Do you think that when they, in their minds, are thinking about getting healthy, that's what they're thinking is, I'm going to look like that guy? That's the ideal that I want?
I would say, it depends on their environment, what they're looking at. I think, so the story I gave you about like my first interaction seeing bodybuilders is a very similar perception to why a lot of people don't like CrossFit. I think if social media was in the late 70s, early 80s, what it is today, people would make the same jokes about bodybuilding because all over social media would have been the stupid things like that situation I told you about that bodybuilders were doing in gyms. You know what I mean? Versus, the gym fails that you see that everybody loves to share about CrossFit. Look, at their core, bodybuilding, CrossFit, we could talk about other modalities. They are as effective a pursuit when intelligently followed for getting healthier, right? Again, when you're going on stage for a bodybuilding competition, you do sacrifice health, utility, abilities to achieve that level of leanness. Right. But when you're going into a CrossFit competition, just like a football game, just like any sport, your concern is not the long-term, just like if you're going to compete in MMA, jiu-jitsu, or boxing or something like that, your concern is not long-term health in that moment. Your concern is performance.
Yeah, I think, at least in my own personal experience, and I did CrossFit for probably 4 or 5 years, and I actually really loved CrossFit. I enjoyed it. And then I moved to Maine and kind of fell by the wayside a little bit, and then I got into strength training. And for me personally, strength training has produced, even just aesthetically, and the way that I feel, the way my body feels, has produced far superior results to CrossFit alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why my hashtag is get strong and do stuff. It's, as I summarize it, the everyday man's version of strength conditioning. If you did CrossFit, you've probably seen the 10 general physical skills.
Yeah. Like stamina, recovery, that sort of thing. Is that what we're talking about?
Cardio, stamina, strength, power, speed, agility, balance.
Got it.
Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Yeah. I can't never remember all 10 from the hip.
Yep.
But strength has the greatest carryover to all other abilities. If we make you stronger in the basic human movement patterns, squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, right? By default, your balance is better. Your accuracy is better because if you gain muscle and you develop strength, which you can put a focus toward one or the other, but they happen symbiotically, all the other physical skills are going to get better. You're going to have better endurance because one of the adaptations of building muscle is capillary blood getting from the heart to the muscles, right?
You got to speak to us as laymen, right? You were going to say that you were going to give us the scientific terms behind it all.
I yeah, I'm not here to, yeah.
It's fine. We can handle it too. We can handle either one. So I want to know it all.
It doesn't, I mean, I can wax poetic, but I don't want to, I'm not here to impress anybody. And again, social media being what it is, I would just get ripped apart for, I didn't verbalize it this way. The accent was on the wrong, whatever. Anyway.
All right.
If you get stronger, all the other 9 physical skills are made better. If we work on your balance, your strength doesn't by default get better. So this is a universal principle, the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, however you want to put that. Strength has the greatest carry over all others, but not just in terms of the short-term physical abilities like that. You increase bone density, ligament and tendon strength, ligament, tendon, tensile strength become stronger. So you are, Mark Ripto, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Wrote Starting Strength. Yeah. Stronger people are harder to kill and more useful in general, right? No truer statement has been made.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think this is probably why we hear so often, you correct me if I'm wrong, but why we talk about compound movements so much is because when you do those compound movements, it's the biggest bang for your buck, is the way that I view it in my head. If you're going to do a squat, for example, or a deadlift, it's the most use of muscles for the least amount of output. Yes.
Yeah. And CrossFit is a good example of this, because before like 2012, the games didn't have a strength bias. And after that, they did. And any good CrossFit gym is going to have a strength bias to their programming, because it is the most effective way, right? I think it was the Russians that started it, calling it GPP, General Physical Preparedness. You work on strength in those basic patterns I talk about, and you can get to a level, we can talk about body weight bench press, 1 1/4 body weight squat, back squat, and then 1.5 deadlift are like some good benchmarks. Everything else being even, there can be injuries that limit that, but those are some good places to start. And then you can work on sports specific stuff from there. Yeah. I was really lucky early in my career to work with some coaches. Cause again, I started in like 2001 when CrossFit was getting popular. Everybody was standing on top of Bosu balls. And, I was really lucky to work with some guys who were like, look, if you have a client that wants to do that, cool. Help them increase that ability, but make them a better athlete in the sport of life, whatever that is for them, being a dad, mom, husband, wife, whatever recreational sport they enjoy. Yeah. And for the long term, not just in, the next 6 months.
Yeah, I never really understood. And I see people at the gym sometimes, and I try not to judge. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their goals and objectives are. It's not for me to decide or judge. But I do look at it and wonder, why in the world are they doing that? Like you said, they're holding an easy curl bar and like doing bicep curls as they're doing air squats on top of a Bosu ball. And I'm like, what would happen if you just learned how to squat like really, really heavy? Would it be better than the shenanigans that you've got going on over here?
Yeah. Yeah. Spoiler alert, it would be.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, since we're talking about CrossFit, you have guys like Rich Froning and Matt Fraser, Fraser's been on the podcast. These guys, a lot of people I don't think really know, maybe they know more now, but 5, 6, 7 years ago, they may not have, that these guys all have strength training regimens built into their training programs. They're not just doing CrossFit so they're good at CrossFit. They're actually building. And that's why you see the CrossFit champion, who's probably, if I had to guess, probably between 5'8" to 5'11", maybe 185 to 210 pounds. And they're just stacked. They're strong as oxes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah, I don't think I can expand on that. I think you nailed it.
Yeah. When it comes to, you talked a little bit about the benchmarks. I think a lot of guys that would be helpful for. I'd love to hear what those are in some of the big lifts. Obviously bench press, deadlift, squat. Pull-ups are a big part. Overhead press, I think, are a big part of what people are doing. And then, of course, there's an infinite number of ancillary type exercises you can do. But what are some of the benchmarks that a guy can look at and say, all right, am I at least strong? Like, am I at least where I need to be, or what do I need to do to get there?
You know, yeah, we can talk about like the bodyweight bench press is a good bench. If we're looking at where to set an initial goal, bodyweight bench press, 1.25 weight bodyweight back squat, 1.5 bodyweight deadlift, right? Can you hit those? When we're talking about general physical preparedness, those are the tests. They're not necessarily the work. You know, you're not just going to do those. There's, especially as we get older, like so much of my workout now is, you know, especially my time in the Marines, working in special operations, you know, the accident I had a few years ago, I'm doing just a lot of unilateral, so single leg work, right? Instead of you've got 2 legs and 1 spine, right? So I need to make sure that that spine is good for the long term. But it's, you know, if we can, I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent here, right? What is strength?
Are you asking me, or are you?
Sorry. Yeah.
I didn't know if you're saying that rhetorically or what. What is strength? That's a really good question. I mean, if we're looking at it maybe from a more scientific perspective, you know, it's got to be an equation of some sorts where, you know, your output is greater than, or your output is greater than your input, or, you know, something along those lines. I don't know quite how to define it, but your ability to move objects at a multiplier of force. So I would say something like that.
So let's you know, I guess we were talking more about the physical right now, but when we look at what is strength, it is the ability of a position or pattern to maintain its integrity under stress.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
We can overlay that definition to your religious or philosophical positions. We can put that definition on your relationship. Do you have a strong relationship?
Sure.
We can overlay that in all domains. But when we look at strength training, we're looking in the physical realm. Again, squat, hinge, push, and pull, right? So the reason why I asked that question, I'm going off on this little tangent, right? When we look at strength training, what we're doing is we're using the body to control the space between 2 pieces of mass,
right?
The earth and the barbell, right? If you remember how mass in two pieces of mass in space have an attraction to each other, that's what we call weight. So instead of putting the emphasis on, you can have these goals of percentage of body weight for the primary movements, but where you start is you put the emphasis on, can I squat well? Can I hinge well? So the next question is, what is the core, right? And when I ask that, most people think 6-pack. It's part of it, but it is the collective of muscles from just below the hips to just below the neck that stabilize your spine and mobilize your spine.
Just above the hips, correct?
Just below the hips, because there are muscles that attach to the top of the legs.
Got it. Okay, all right.
The muscles, we don't even have to go that far. We can say the muscles that stabilize and mobilize the spine, right? So you have to be able to practice that. When you squat, if you're going to be squatting 400 pounds someday, can you squat all the way down and keep your spine in the same shape as it changes position? Or you're familiar with the term butt wink, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, that's when you squat if your hips tuck under at the bottom, right? That's what we call a butt wink. Yeah. So what happens there? Because the spine is just a series of joints stacked on top of one another. So if you squat down, that butt wink happens. All those discs at the bottom are like this. There is an opportunity for injury, which translates to a loss of power. Because proprioceptively, your body senses there's an opportunity for injury. It's going to limit how much power you can put out there. So
interesting.
So before we talk about, like, if you're just getting back into strength training, this is where, when I'm starting with somebody, right, there's two types of clients, right? There's the kind of have to push, they're just starting, the kind of often have to pull the reins back on. The difference between strength training and yoga is external load. They're both a practice of shapes, right? And then the more stress we put on those patterns, going back to that definition of strength, the more stress you are dealing with to maintain that movement pattern as you move through it. Wait, I know I threw a lot of information out there, man. What kind of questions does that bring up?
I mean, for me, as you're talking about this is why I think, and you tell me what you think about this, that technique is so important. In fact, I think it's probably more important than weight. There's an Instagram account that I follow. I think it's called Ego Lifters. And it's guys doing, bicep curls that are way too heavy, and they're like arching their back and like tweaking their body and having spasms just to get this barbell or this cable bicep curl up, or, squat. They're doing squats, but they have that butt wink and their back's all rounded, and it looks like they're just going to kill themselves, but they're trying to hit that ego mark.
Those bicep curl guys are just doing like one arm cable cleans. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I think of, but it's hard. I will say it's hard, because when I go to the gym, I have an app and I train, every 6 days a week I train. And so I have this app and I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, here's what I did on squat last week. Of course I want to do more this week. So it's good because things like that, tracking it pushes you, but also, is it appropriate if you start breaking down in form? And I'm sure there's been times where I have, because I'm pushing more than I'm able to do with proper form and technique.
Right. Yeah, you nailed it there. You were, a while ago, was it at Uprising, or we were talking about, somebody mentioned missing a PR. And I made a joke saying, what's missing a PR? And you were like, oh, come on. I think you can agree that everybody's going to miss a PR at some point. And if you're lifting intelligently, and again, we all stray from that path, our ego pulls us off that path. You wouldn't, right? When you look at the guys that set world records in, powerlifting now, and we can go off on a tangent and how they're supplementing their workouts, but they don't miss lifts for 6 to 12 months before they set world records, right? Because it is a simple linear formula. Now, these guys are also following to the T, the linear formula of sleep, of nutrition, of supplementation, of, however they're enhancing their performance there outside of the workout. But again, for us being dads and living in the real world and, dealing with injuries we've sustained and all that stuff, just a few weeks ago, there was a lift I was going for, and I was just like, I can't do this today. Right. It was the better move. Something didn't feel right in my back. It was the better move to step away and go work something else. So I consider that somewhat of a PR, and that I conquered my ego that day. Right. That is intelligent lifting. That is keeping the long-term, what, we've talked about, legacy and lifestyle goals in mind.
I think that's a good distinction. So when you're saying PR, you're talking about more than just what was the weight on the bar at that moment. You're talking about, did you hit it with proper technique? Did you do it in a way that would create strength and longevity for you without the risk of hurting yourself? So there's a lot more going into what you would consider a PR versus what most people consider as, it was the heaviest weight on the bar that I've ever been able to move from here to here.
Yeah. So back to originally why I went off on this tangent is you were asking about benchmarks for weight. Be the best mover. Be able to drop into a full body weight squat and keep your spine in that neutral natural position. When you move through squat, hinge, push, and pull, you need to be able to maintain the shape of your spine while it changes position. And then good form, if we can, everybody loves to toss that phrase around, is movement with zero unintentional movement.
I think that's actually interesting, because I've seen, and I've done this too, where, you might be doing a bench press and let's say it's heavier. Let's say you really want to go heavy and push it hard. I've done this where you see it like bounce off your chest or throw your hips up, or do some, wacky spasm to try to get it to where you need it to be. I mean, sometimes you just have to do that out of necessity, but
Yeah.
I think that's what you're talking about. Cause I think about when I watch a guy who's strong and has experience, I can see him the way he moves on let's say a squat, for example. It's very deliberate. My son's this way actually, cause he has a lot of, powerlifting, training under his belt. And so when he moves, everything is very deliberate and intentional from the time that he gets into the rack to the time that he sits in the bottom of his squat, versus some guys will just like throw it in there, bounce out of the squat. Like they're just so inefficient.
Yeah. And then that's not what we want to do on a heavy squat. We want to move with intention. Yeah. 100%, man. Sounds
How
like
do you get over
an
the ego though?
Young lifter.
He's a smart kid, but he also had good coaches. So he had a great coach. His name's Sean Moore in Maine, who was very, very disciplined. Loved the boys, worked great with them, good person, but was very disciplined and adamant about taking lifting very seriously. Like, we move with intention, we move deliberately, we don't push as hard as we possibly can. We get up there by maintaining form. I really respect Sean a lot for what he taught my son.
Yeah, that's great. We talked about this. My son at 5 years old, we started him in jiu-jitsu this year. And when we had kids, we talked about, my wife and I said, they're going to play a sport, and male or female, they're going to practice some sort of fight discipline, some sort of combat discipline. And I was a boxer when I was younger, but I don't care what method it is. What was most important to me was the coach. Because if you got some, Uncle Rico guy out there who is just, upset he's never made it to be a world champion and is taken out on the kids, it's not good for them. Right. So yeah, it's being able to teach, like, because another thing I'll tell clients is one of the keys to long-term success in health and well-being is for your goals to be exciting with a little bit of intimidation in there. And then we keep your program as boring as you can stand. Right. So it's going to, once you get into some serious strength markers and you see your performance really accelerating, like, that stuff gets exciting, but it's still, it can be boring following a program that is hammering the same basics for weeks on months on years. But that's how magic
really
happens.
Interesting. I mean, it's interesting you say that, because a principle applies broadly, right? It will apply to fitness as well as it'll apply to finances. And one of the things when I was a financial advisor, that's in another life, but I spent 10 years as a financial advisor, I would tell people, look, we need to find out what your risk tolerance is. We need to figure out what you're trying to accomplish relative to the amount of risk you're willing to take in order to accomplish it. And then once we figure that out, we're going to invest properly. We're going to rebalance your portfolio systematically, but quarterly. And we're not going to touch it at all other than that. We're not going to fiddle with it. We're not going to play with it. You don't need to look at it every day. We're just going to maintain the course. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It sounds boring. Your friends are going to tell you all the exciting, wonderful returns they're getting, but this is the path. And that's exactly what I hear you saying when it comes to fitness.
Yeah. And were you a financial advisor during the financial crisis?
I got into the business in late 2008, early 2009. So I got into the business at about the worst possible time that you could get into financial planning, right at the height of the crash, the market crash, the stock market, housing market crash.
Yeah. So, because then the question, like you said, these principles overlay. The question I would have is, like, that would change tactics, right? Because
I actually don't think it. I don't think it would, actually, because one of the things that I saw is that those people who started to pull their money out of the market and start to play around and manipulate a little bit ended up taking historically longer to get to that break-even point and growth than the ones who just maintain the status quo even through the declines.
Okay.
But explain to me how that might work when it comes to fitness, though.
Well, because when you were talking about the principles of how you apply what I was talking about to financial investing, I was thinking about, my accident, which we've talked about before. November 19th, 2017, I was squatting 405 and did Power Elizabeth, right? November 20th, pinned between two cars. November 21st, my workout was taking 10 steps with a walker.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the intensity changed, but it was still basic human movement pattern, moving within the capabilities I had at that time.
I mean, it's still the fundamentals at the end of the day, right? So
Yep.
Yeah. I would, and I had a similar circumstance happen. I shouldn't say similar, because it's not even comparable to the ordeal you went through. But I had a pectoral rupture, complete rupture, and I was training jujitsu. That's how I heard it. So I was training jujitsu heavy at that time, and I didn't stop training. Now, granted, I wasn't doing push-ups and bench press, and dips are still, even to this day, dips are a little tough for me. I don't fully trust my pec on a dip. But I still went to the gym. I still went to jujitsu. I was doing box step ups. I had a sling that I had to have my arm in a sling for 3 months, but I was doing box step ups. I was doing lunges. I was watching the guys train. Yeah. I was there. I was fully present and involved with continuing to stay on track. And what was interesting about it is when I got back on the mats, I had a couple of guys say, "Man, it's like you're almost better now." Well, I should be better, because I never stopped. I got to see it from a different perspective. I got to learn. I got to watch all of you guys. I got to stay over here and train different parts of my body I would normally train. Like, I should be better in light of that.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's, a lot of people use injuries as a reason to stop, an excuse to stop, I should say, when they are actually a reason to continue training. Because, what's the old adage about the doctor? Well, it hurts when I do this. Well, don't do that. No, your body is supposed to be able to do these movements. So you need to practice, figure out why it hurts when you do that, and address it and be able to fix it. So yeah, man. In mindset of, I will get this back is important as well. Like, we had, after that accident, there was one of the nurses on the ICU floor was a member at one of the CrossFit boxes I coached at. And, if I can just expand on my accident for the audience a little bit. So I was loading my dog into the back of my Jeep, taking her to a vet appointment, and an intoxicated driver came along, hit me and pinned my right leg between the front of his truck and the back of my Jeep. So again, the day before that, squatting 405, the day after that in ICU, taking 10 steps with a walker. But severe crush syndrome, compartment syndrome, all the muscles in the right leg, MCL detached, but no breaks, 3 severe bone bruises. I still have the rear bumper off that Jeep that's got my leg print in it. So one of the nurses in the ICU, being a CrossFitter, was like, "This is why you guys need to come to CrossFit," So it was spread around the floor that at 40 years old, I was a guy who was outperforming 20-year-olds in these CrossFit gyms. So, but then, the head doctor came in and she said, "Mr. Mancine, I need you to understand your strength training history is the reason you fared this accident so well, because there is a percentage of the population that would have lost their leg. Most people would have had a break. You had 3 severe bone bruises, so you fared it better than most, and you will recover better. But those days are behind you." And I understand she was probably well-intended. But I knew in that moment I needed to set a boundary and say no. So I asked her, "Who's in charge of my care?" The look on her face instantly told me she thought I was asking where's the man in charge, which that's fine if, that would be insulting if that's what I meant. She said, "I'm in charge. Are you okay with that?" I said, "No, ma'am, you're a consultant. I'm in charge of my health care. I will squat 405 again." And, she rolled her eyes a little bit. Again, it was just a misunderstanding in that situation. But
Yeah.
for me, it was critically important that I made that statement of, I'm not done. This injury is not defining me, right? So it took me 16 months to get back to 405.
What do you squat now? What's your I won't say PR, is that a bad word in your vocabulary?
No.
Or
Okay. It is rare that I could probably hit 455. I don't really back squat much anymore. I'll usually front squat. I do a lot of unilateral work, so different lunge variations. Just again, I've got the Marine Corps beat the shit out of my body through the late 90s. The accident didn't help, but pursuing fitness and resilience definitely has helped. I'm faring better than most through those situations. When you look at, I served 2 years in Fast Company with working in special operations there. When you look at guys that have worked in that environment, they often don't fare well into, they see very low testosterone levels as they get into 30s and 40s. Just a lot of issues. And I'm not saying I'm, not dealing with any of that, but man, lifestyle is the original hormone therapy. And even if you do engage in that stuff, you have to meet that medicine halfway.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the common misconceptions about TRT, for example, is, you start injecting that stuff on a weekly basis or every couple of days, however often you do it. And all of a sudden, you're going to be this jacked specimen walking around. And it's like, nah, you still got to put in the work, because it's not going to just do it for you, even though that would be very nice. But I think a lot of people think that if somebody's on TRT, they think, well, that guy has it easy. It's like, nah, he doesn't have it easy. He's still got to work hard.
Yeah, for sure, man. Again, I just always tell people, if you're going to do that, you have to meet the medicine halfway.
Yeah. Well, so you said you don't do many squats anymore. Is that a spot, like, more concern for your spine, or what would you say is the biggest focus or factor in not really doing that much more?
Just long-term health. We talked about the three types of goals. And, the first is the aesthetic, which is what most people start with. So I want to look a certain way, this person's arms, abs, weigh a certain amount, whatever. And that's good to have. And that's what a lot of people are starting with right now. It's January. But it's kind of intangible. You see your body all day, every day, so you see those results last. The second goal, and this is the one that helps keep, if you keep in mind, helps keep you in check for the long term, is what I call the lifestyle or legacy goal. What type of old person you want to be? Which a lot of people don't like to think of themselves that way, but let's be clear, that's one of the best things that can happen to you, is you can get old. And what type of old person you become is up to you. So when, again, 5-year-old son, 3-year-old daughter, I'm 47. So when they're around 20, I'm going to be in my 60s. And at that point, I want to go on some sort of adventure trip of their choosing. Climb Kilimanjaro, hike the Appalachian Trail, the Grand Canyons, go skydiving, whatever. And if I'm going to do that at that point, I need to be working on my health and fitness now. Now, if I'm heavy back squatting every week, that might not fare well for me, in my 60s. So yeah, just to close that loop on the three types of goals, the third one that connects those two is the what I call the empowering goal. So in the next 3 to 12 months, what is it that you want to accomplish? Spartan races, CrossFit competitions, it can be a bodybuilding competition, anything like that. Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I've made a couple little shifts in my programming. Like even the deadlift. I've never really enjoyed the deadlift. I know it's good. I focus on it every week, but I moved over to a trap bar and I love doing that more than, again, I think for me, the alignment of the way the body moves feels better. It doesn't feel as burdensome, or I could be way off. I don't know. I'm just saying intuitively it feels better to me to keep the bar in alignment with my spine rather than out in front of it.
Right. Exactly. Keep it close to, again, what CrossFitters call the midline. Yeah. I mean, for hinging now, I'm doing, again, mostly so single leg deadlifts, stuff like that. When I do, it's usually, when I do bilateral 2 legs, it's usually a trap bar. Yeah, I think that's a
single
good call,
leg deadlift. Is that like a what do they call that? Like where you put one foot up on a bench and then you squat with dumbbells, or what? What is that?
So
what would a single leg deadlift?
It's just, you can do a deadlift standing on one leg. You can do what's called a kickstand deadlift, where you put the foot back. Yeah, you can put up on a wall push, or put the rear leg up on. Yeah, there are other things to look at when you're doing that, but yeah, man.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that. I've just seen I don't know what they call it. Is it a Bulgarian split squat or something? I don't know what they even call it.
Yeah, Bulgarian split squat. That's more of a squat pattern, but you can, it depends again, how the spine is moving in relation, the spine and hips are moving in relation to the, I don't want to get into teaching
I'm glad you talked about the what kind of old person do you want to be? Because that's actually what got me into fitness. I was young. I was probably, I've always been athletic. I've always been involved in sports and training and things like that. But I really started to take it seriously probably, 15 years ago, maybe or so. And I came home from work one day. This was in my financial planning practice. And my boys are like, Dad, let's go jump on the trampoline. And I remember the look on their faces when I had to say, I can't, like, I'm too tired. I can't go jump on the trampoline with you. And I'm like, oh no, that's not right. And that's when I really pivoted, is I need to be able to go out after work. What do I do at work? Sit in chairs, drive a truck, it's not hard physical labor. I should be able to jump on the trampoline with my kids when I get home. And so I started to take it very seriously. And I've had ebbs and flows throughout the past 15 years, but man, when I'm on, it's on, and it's funny to see my boys get worn out before I do.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's, it's a good feeling to be able to keep up with your kids. And again, I'm an older dad, so that's something I've got to take into consideration.
It is weird now, though, with a 16-year-old. That kid out squats and out deadlifts me. So he back squats. I think the last one he did was 395-pound back squat at 16 and a 415-pound deadlift. He's a beast. He has got tree trunk legs and a huge butt, and he knows how to use that stuff.
That's awesome. He's playing lacrosse, right?
Yeah, big in lacrosse. He's played spring and fall ball lacrosse. I think he's going to play football in the fall next year, but he's got spring lacrosse coming up just around the corner here.
That's awesome, man. Yeah.
It's actually pretty funny because you'll watch him. He's big, and so you'll watch him against other players, and anytime kids will run into him and they'll literally bounce off of him just because of his base and his frame. He's just such a large kid, and he knows how to use his weight because of strength training. It's kind of funny to watch, actually.
I had a basketball player I trained years ago, high school basketball player. And yeah, she was a female. When we started, she was just timid and not doing great on the court. Man, I worked with her for a year and a half, and she just became a defensive powerhouse. Girls bigger than her we got her squat and deadlift up big time. And yeah, I remember her parents invited me to a game, and I remember going and seeing, and I remember the other players bouncing off of her, and it was awesome to see.
So satisfying to watch.
Yeah.
You're talking about confidence, and I think that obviously getting in shape, building strength, all of those things are going to build confidence. But I also think there's a threat for a lot of guys who maybe haven't been to the gym in a while, maybe have never been, and ego gets in the way. They won't go, for example, because, here's one thing I've heard. I'm going to wait to go to the gym before I get in shape. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, I'm going to get in shape before I get
first, and then you're going to go to the gym? That's one. Or the opposite is the ego lifters, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it's a cop-out. That's exactly what that is. You know, I had a client years ago who, when you work with somebody for a couple of months, you develop a relationship and you'll joke back and forth with each other. So in one of the workouts in between sets, we were talking about the crazy things we'd seen in our career. And she was an event coordinator. So seeing crazy things, coordinating these events for big companies like banks and whatever. So I told her this thing. I've been going to gyms again since the late 80s. And this was 2007. I was having this conversation before social media was a big thing. No matter what time you went in the gym, midnight, 6 a.m., 6 p.m., it didn't matter. Somebody was sitting in their car in the parking lot, just sitting there. Right? So I'd shared that before, and people were like, oh, what do you think they're doing? Are they stalking someone? Blah, 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 whatever. So I told her that, and it was like, yeah, what do you think about that? And she goes, oh, yeah, I know. I was like, what do you mean you know? She's like, that was me for 3 months before I joined this gym. Packed my bag to go to the gym, went to work, and I would go and sit in that parking lot and tell myself, go in the gym, and she couldn't do it. Heaviest weight in the gym is the front door, man. You've got to get over that shit. The right gym, you know, again, there are ego lifters out there, and Joey Swole loves highlighting all the a-holes that'll be in the gym.
Oh, yeah,
there.
that's pretty funny, actually.
Right. But most gyms have a community where they want people in there who want to work on themselves, right?
Of course.
Like, I have a shirt that says, of course you can work in, just ask. Like, that's fitness is a culture of self-efficacy and communal respect. Right?
I actually had that the other day. Somebody was on a machine, and I think I was kind of in a hurry or something, and I noticed they were taking breaks, and I'm like, hey man, can I jump in here while you're taking a break? I'm just kind of on a time crunch. And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. So I lifted with him, and then we would just switch between sets, you know, and I actually ended up becoming a friend with this guy. So, you know, I see him at the gym every day. We have conversations about what's going on. Like it's not, if you make it a thing, it's a thing. But if you don't make it a big deal, the community of lifting and getting strong and getting healthy is thriving, and people want to see you win. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. People are in there to work on themselves, and they want to surround themselves with people who want to get better.
Yeah. With that client that was so afraid to go in, where she would sit in the car, what did she tell you was her greatest fear? What was keeping her from, I mean, she did all the work of getting ready, driving over. Like, what was the fear?
I mean, it's judgment, you know, it's perception. So I think one of the biggest challenges in the way people misinterpret health and fitness and gym culture is derived from, if you look at any sitcom over the last 40 years, they probably had the episode where the main character or characters joined a gym. And, you know, when they're signing up for the gym membership, everybody's really nice. Oh, we welcome you, da, 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 da. And then they'll be like, oh, it's really nice here. And then they turn around and the psycho trainer's there and like, do 100 push-ups right now, do 1,000,000 lunges, right? And then they can't move for the rest of the episode. And then the culmination of the episode is the message, oh, you're fine. You don't need to pursue that. Those people are crazy, right? And so that's what the perception of what goes on. Now, of course, does some of that exist in gyms out there? Sure, but it is not the standard.
Yeah. I mean, I've never experienced that or seen that, but I do remember, I will say this. I remember after the trampoline incident, I remember going into the CrossFit gym for the first time, and I have a picture on my computer somewhere of me and what I looked like when I went in there. They were doing pull-ups, and I'm like sitting there with my hands on my hips with my big belly sticking out. And I'm like, I can't do that. I was so intimidated. I'm like, there's no way. And then they had you do the assisted pull-ups with a band, right? And I had to use the thickest band they could find to be able to just get my fat butt up above the bar. It was a little embarrassing, to be honest. It was a lot embarrassing. But I guess if you want to be good at something and you want to change your life around, you got to be willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, man. And if you could see inside everyone else's head in that gym, they weren't looking or thinking about you.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
Right? And if they were probably like, good on that guy for getting in here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I've definitely felt that way. One thing that you talk about too is you talk about this idea of lifestyle evolution versus lifestyle change, because I think one thing a lot of people will get into, you know, as we get into spring, as we start getting into summer, it's like get the 6-pack abs in 90 days and do this thing and do that thing for 90 days. And then you can completely blow your program after that. I don't think that's sustainable. And I don't actually think it's what most people want. I think they want long-term health, not just blast your 6-pack abs for the, you know, beach body.
Yeah. Yeah. So the verbiage of lifestyle change implies that you make this change and then all of a sudden life is easy, right? And it's the way you live now, where it's, you know, it's a decision you make every day. It's a box you check every day of putting in that work. But then it's also, you have, by and large, we have these systems and programs that we run on to be efficient in our lives. John Berardi did this meta study years ago where he looked at habit change and in specifically nutrition. And he took split people into 3 groups, basically. 1 nutrition change over 30 days, no support given. We just follow up in 30 days, see if you were successful. 2 nutrition changes in 30 days and 3 nutrition changes in 30 days, right? Well, the group that only had 1 nutrition change to adhere to had a 55% success rate, so just over half. The group with 2 nutrition changes had a 15% success rate. And then the group with 3 nutrition changes over 30 days had a less than 1% success rate, right? So the more changes you make, the more difficult it's going to be. Now, what an actual lifestyle change could do for you. In 2022, retired my mom and moved her in with us so she could be professional grandma. Now I'm going to share the story here, and she actually wants me to share this story because she said she hopes it inspires some people. For 25 years, she'd been working in advertising sales. The majority of her clients were restaurants. She was the best at what she did. So she would, you know, increase their business by a lot. She did great marketing campaigns. And so she would eat for free in a lot of the restaurants around Pittsburgh, where I grew up. And again, she is okay with me sharing all this. During those years, she was a functional alcoholic. So we figured out over 25 years, less than 500 of the meals that she had were home cooked. So she was very out of shape. She was a dancer when she was younger. She actually owned a dance studio for a little bit. But she had gotten to this point where she was very out of shape. And then her mom retired her mom passed, my grandmother, right when she was at the end of her career. My grandmother was, you know, she had worked with a trainer into her 80s. It's a true story. I told this at her eulogy. When she was in assisted living, she burned out the motor on her lift assist chair because she thought it was intended to help her do squats. It's a true story. She was a badass, man. Living, breathing. Every time we had dinner at her house, it was always chicken and vegetables. So anyway, so my mom, you know, end of her career, faced with her own mortality when her mom passes. I remember being on the phone with her one time, and she was like, "What do I do? Like, what am I doing here? All of my friends are just, you know, party people, and again, this is in Pittsburgh. My brother moved to North Carolina. My sister's in Ohio, and I'm down in Texas. Said, come down here, move in with us, be a professional grandma." So we were going to try it out for 2 months. So she had an actual lifestyle change, completely changed her environment, her circle of people she lived or she spent time with. She went from eating all this processed food out at restaurants to eating only the homemade stuff my wife cooks. She went from a high stress job to being professional grandma. She lost 30 pounds in the first 30 days.
Jeez, yeah, it's amazing.
Over the 60, she lost 48 pounds total. So, of course, she's like, I'm in. She goes back home to close up things and check out with her doctor. Her doctor, who she'd been seeing for 40 years, said, "Kathy, if I hadn't seen this with my own 2 eyes, I would have thought it were impossible." I said, "Mom, does that sound like somebody you should take health and fitness advice from?" That's not to say don't listen to your doctor, right? But again, I always come back to doctors or consultants. I am in charge of my health and well-being, and I'm not going to outsource it.
Well, I think don't listen to your doctor unless they're healthy and have the physique and the lifestyle and everything else that there's some basic things like here's what you can do for a cold, or, maybe a surgeon is overweight and out of shape, but he's got some specialty knowledge. But general practitioners, man, they should be in shape. They absolutely should be in shape. There's no excuse for that.
I think everybody should be, man.
Yeah.
Was it you that shared the quote about what a shame it is for a man not to realize his physical potential?
Somebody shared it on Instagram just the other day. It's attributed to Socrates. Somebody said that's I made that post about getting in shape and I said that quote and then I attributed it to Socrates because I think generally it is. And they're like, oh, that's a misquote. I'm like, cool. Like,
again, the internet
don't get hung up on it. It doesn't matter.
You're right. I guess I'll scrap this whole thing then.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true though. I think we all want to know what our bodies are capable of and we all want to work towards that. It can be challenging, but it's not impossible for anybody.
It's true, man. Yeah.
Brandon, how do we connect with you? A lot of guys are thinking about what they want to do with their New Year's resolutions and how to get in shape. And obviously not everybody's in Texas and, may not be able to work with you in person or anything like that, but I'm sure you have other programs and options available.
Yeah, I do a lot of online coaching. You can connect me on Instagram. I've got 2 accounts on there, Coach Brandon Mancine or BMF Coach. BMF Coaching, Brandon Mancine Fitness is the name of my company. BMFcoaching.com. If you go there, you can jump on my email newsletter. And by the time this website or by the time this podcast airs, I'm going to have a 7-day challenge up there for men to help them get in to help them get initiated into getting in the best shape of their life. Awesome.
Well, we'll sync it all up, man. I've really appreciated getting to know you over the past several years and being able to work together. And you've been instrumental in what I do too. So the fact that we can have you on talking about this really important topic has been good, man. I appreciate you.
Back at you, Ryan. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, brother.